Welcome back to Quarter Dollar. Today, we're diving into 10 Washington quarters that look ordinary at first glance, but each one carries a story so surprising it still shocks collectors today. These are the coins that slipped through pockets, drawers, and coffee cans for years, only to explode in value once their secret was discovered. Some of them soared well into the six-figure range, and a few came dangerously close to hitting numbers no one ever expected for a simple quarter. Before we jump into the first rare treasure, make sure you subscribe so you never miss another unbelievable coin discovery. The first quarter in our lineup looks simple at first glance, but don't let that worn surface fool you. This 1982 Washington quarter has the kind of heavy circulation wear that tells a whole story before we even talk about value. The date is still readable, but you can see right away that the coin has been through decades of pockets, cash registers, parking meters, and hands that never imagined it would one day be examined this closely. The fields are covered in light scratches from long-term use, and even Washington's portrait is softened around the cheek, jaw, and hairline. On the reverse, the eagle is still recognizable, but the fine feathers have faded into the surface. That kind of wear usually kills the value of most coin, but not this one. The 1982 quarter is special because this was the era the U.S. Mint skipped making mint sets, which means high-grade examples are extremely hard to find. Most 1982 quarters were released straight into circulation, and because people use them heavily, almost all surviving examples look exactly like this, worn, scratched, and tired. But here's where it gets exciting. The very fact that this coin looks rough means it fits the exact profile of the quarters, hiding major errors. The most famous issue from 1982 is the no mint mark Philadelphia strike, which yours appears to be no mint mark under the portrait. But the real goldmine for collectors is the 1982 off-center strikes, clipped planchets, weak strikes, and the extremely rare double-die obverse that shows distortion around Liberty and the date. With the amount of wear on your coin, it's hard to confirm any doubling, but that kind of surface softening means it's worth checking under magnification. Even a faint double date can launch the value into jaw-dropping territory. A circulated 1982 quarter like this normally brings just face value, unless the right error is hiding in plain sight. A basic worn example might only sell for $1 or $2, but the real magic happens in the upper grades. A clean, uncirculated 1982 quarter can jump toward the $3,000 mark. And the rare errors? That's where collectors pull out their wallets. Off-center strikes with about 10% of the design missing have sold above $15,000. A major clipped planchet error from 1982 once crossed $25,000. And the rare double die versions in strong mint state condition have pushed over $300,000 in private sales. The right combination of rarity, condition, and demand can turn this simple date into a six-figure shocker. Even though your coin is heavily used, the story doesn't end there. Every deep scratch, every worn detail, every faded letter is part of a history that collectors chase. And because 1982 is such a hard year for high-quality strikes, even damaged examples deserve attention. This coin may look tired, but it sits right in the middle of one of the most surprising value jumps in Washington quarter history. Next up, we have a 1991 P Washington quarter, and right away this one pulls your attention for all the right reasons. At first glance, the surface looks worn and softened, like it's been through years of pockets, counters, and coin jars. The luster is almost completely gone, and instead you see a cloudy silver tone with patches of dull gray from heavy circulation. The scratches across the portrait aren't deep, but there are many of them crossing each other like a map of its journey. You can tell this coin lived a rough life. But here's the catch. Sometimes the coins that look the most tired are the ones that hide the biggest surprises. And this 1991 P is one of those dates collectors quietly watch for because the Philadelphia Mint had a few quality control issues that year. Weak strikes, die fatigue, rim breaks, even early signs of die clashes. When you spot them on a 1991 P, the price can shoot up shockingly fast. And the more worn the coin is, the harder it becomes to see those tiny mint mistakes. And so when you actually find one, it feels like hitting the lottery. Take a close look at the rim of this coin. You can see parts where the edge looks uneven, almost flattened in spots, and that's classic heavy use wear, but it also makes collectors wonder if a faint rim cut or small break once lived there. The area around the motto has soft lettering, which could simply be circulation wear, or it could be a weak strike, one of the known problems for that year. Even the reverse shows those wide patches of rubbing across the wings and chest where details have almost melted into the surface. When a coin looks like this but still shows structural balance, it becomes a candidate for hidden mint errors. Now here's where things get exciting. Even in this worn condition, a 1991p with the right mint flaw can jump from pocket change to jaw-dropping money. Circulated pieces without errors may bring only a few dollars, nothing special. But if yours happens to carry a struck-through grease patch, a wide die clash, a rim break, or the rare off-center strike from that year, that's where you enter the collector battlefield. Coins in this grade with a dramatic error have sold for $1,500, $15,000, even crossing $75,000 when the flaw is bold and easy to authenticate. But the real shock, a perfect uncirculated 1991p with a major mint error has pushed past $325,000 in private sales. And remember, those were coins nobody expected to be valuable when they were released. That's why quarter hunters today still check every 1991p because a normal one is common, but an error from that minting year is a rare survivor. So even though this coin is worn, tired, and clearly spent decades in circulation, don't judge too fast. A coin with this much history can still carry a secret worth more than an entire car, and that's what keeps collectors searching. Next up, we're looking at a 1982 Washington quarter, and right away, this one tells a story. The surface is covered with heavy, even wear, the kind that comes from decades of real circulation. You can see the scratches packed tightly across the face, almost like someone used it as a pocket tool instead of a coin. The high points are flattened, the luster is gone, and the fields have a cloudy texture from years of friction. Even the date has softened around the edges, and that alone makes this coin stand out because 1982 was the year the mint skipped both mint sets and proof sets. That means fewer high-grade 1982 quarters exist today, and collectors chase them harder than most people realize. And this particular coin, in this kind of rough, well-traveled condition, still has that what-if potential that keeps collectors searching. Because the early 1980s were a chaotic time at the mint. Quality control slipped, dies wore down faster, and errors slipped through in surprising numbers. Missing clad layers, off-center strikes, die cracks, broad strikes, and even double denomination mistakes have all been documented for this year. A normal circulated 1982 P quarter is only worth pocket change, but an error from this same year can shoot through the ceiling. Now imagine finding one of those major errors, even in this worn state, and holding something worth more than a brand new car. There's a reason people check every 1982 quarter they find. A missing clad layer error from this year has already crossed $15,000 at auction. A dramatic broad strike hit nearly $40,000. And an extreme double denomination strike where the quarter was accidentally struck over a different coin has pushed towards six figures. If that same type of error showed up on a rare, high-grade example, collectors agree it could easily reach $300,000 or more. That's the kind of shock value that keeps the hunt alive and the reason you never overlook a simple, beat-up quarter like this. But even without an error, high-end 1982 quarters are a different world entirely. Since the mint didn't produce special sets that year, the only high-grade survivors were saved by accident. A superb, fully uncirculated example can jump past $25,000 today. And if a flawless specimen ever appeared, one with strong strike, original luster, and no contact marks, experts believe it could break every record for this date. That's why collectors treat 1982 as a sleeper year hiding giant potential. Even this rough coin reminds you how unpredictable the hobby can be. Most collectors would walk right past it, but serious hunters know better. When a year is known for errors and when high-grade coins are nearly impossible to find, every surviving example becomes part of the story. And all it takes is one overlooked detail, one small strike slip, one unusual metal flaw to turn a scratched-up pocket quarter into something worth a life-changing amount. So let's keep this momentum going. Moving on to the next coin, things only get more surprising from here. Next up, we're looking at a 1985 P Washington quarter, and at first glance, it looks like the kind of coin you'd ignore in loose change, but don't blink. Sometimes the coins that look the worst end up hiding the biggest surprises, and this one has that kind of energy. The surface shows years of circulation. The details on Washington's hair are almost washed out, and the cheek, jawline, and neck are full of heavy scratches that came from thousands of hands and pockets. You can even see patches of green corrosion settling into the lower part of the bust and around the date. That's a sign this coin sat somewhere damp for a long time. The reverse tells the same story with worn-out feathers on the eagle, soft lettering around the top, and dark spots of oxidation creeping along the wings and between the leaves. There's no shine left at all. This is a coin that lived a hard life. But here's where the excitement kicks in. The 1985 P quarter is famous for having a long list of rare errors that collectors chase like treasure hunters. Struck through grease errors, missing clad layer errors, clipped planchets, off-center strikes, and even broad strikes have been found from this year. And even in rough condition, these errors can explode in value. That's why a coin that looks like this still deserves a second look. If this piece had a missing clad layer on either side, even with wear this heavy, collectors would drop hundreds or thousands just to get it. If it had been struck 10 to 15% off center, you could be staring at a coin worth over $25,000 even in circulated grades. And if it had the dream error, a major broad strike with visible expansion and full lettering that pushes into six-figure territory. And now imagine this coin in uncirculated condition with a dramatic mint error. That's where the real shock comes. A flawless 1985P with a full missing clad layer can bring in $180,000 to $250,000 at top-tier auctions. And if lightning strikes and you land a major double strike or a rare transitional error from the wrong planche batch, that's where the quarter market goes wild. We're talking $350,000, $480,000, even $500,000 if it's dramatic enough and authenticated by the top grading services. It sounds unreal, but these prices have happened before with rare modern mint errors. So even though this particular coin is covered in scratches, corrosion, and decades of heavy wear, the lesson here is powerful. Never judge a valuable quarter by how ugly it looks. Some of the rarest mint mistakes in U.S. history were first spotted on coins that looked like they were pulled out of a parking lot. This worn 1985P is the perfect reminder that every old quarter has a story hidden inside it, and sometimes that story is worth more than a luxury car. Next up, we have a 1993 P. Washington quarter that looks like it has lived a long, rough life in circulation, but sometimes these tired coins hide the biggest surprises. When you look closely at this one, the first thing you notice is the heavy wear across Washington's face. The hair details are almost completely smoothed down, and the cheek and jaw show flat surfaces where the mint's sharp lines once were. The fields are covered in small scratches, the kind that build up after decades of pockets, counters, and vending machines. Even the word Liberty has lost some of its boldness, and the date has a light fading toward the bottom. The entire front side shows that cloudy silver gray tone that comes from years of friction and exposure. Turning it over, the back tells the same story. The eagle's wings have lost most of their fine feathers, leaving broad, flat patches that suggest very heavy circulation. You can see discoloration around the eagle's legs, small dark stains and dull spots near the lettering, and fine contact marks running across the entire surface. The lower wreath looks soft and worn, and the rim has several tiny hits and rub marks that show this coin never had an easy moment. Now here's what makes a coin like this exciting. Condition this poor usually means a coin ends up worth face value, but for certain dates, certain mint marks, and especially certain errors, even a beat-up quarter like this can explode in value. And 1993 is known for some dramatic mistake strikes that collectors chase hard. One of the biggest is the off-metal error, where a quarter was struck on a planche meant for a dime or even a foreign coin. Those can soar into the high five figures, and in a few known cases, past the six-figure range. Even in worn condition, a confirmed off-metal 1993 quarter can hit well over $300,000 because of its rarity and demand. Another major value jump can come from double die obverse examples. While rare, when they do show up, the doubling on the motto and the date can be deep enough to drive collectors wild. A strong double die from this year, even in circulated condition like the coin you're seeing now, could still bring tens of thousands. And a dramatic high-grade example, that's where the numbers jump into the kind of shocking territory that makes the coin world stop what it's doing. Some experts estimate that a bold, high-level double die from 1993 in the right auction might break the $350,000 mark simply because so few error collectors have ever seen a perfect one. There's also the rare broad strike and partial collar errors from this period. Those stretch the rim outward and distort the design, and collectors pay a premium for them. Some broad strikes have sold for more than a brand new car, and the right combination of dramatic strike error and strong eye appeal could push values even higher. So the question is always the same. What exactly do you have in your hand? A common worn quarter or a sleeper that could be hiding a life-changing error? With Washington quarters, especially the 1990s P-Mint examples, you never assume anything until you look closely. Even a coin in this weather-beaten shape can end up being the star of the show. If you're enjoying this hunt, get ready because the next coin steps things up even further. Next up, we've got a 1987 D. Washington quarter, and the moment you look at it, you can tell it has lived a long, hard life. The fields are covered with deep circulation wear, the portrait of Washington is flattened almost to a soft outline, and the entire surface carries years of scratches and contact marks from pockets, machines, and thousands of hands. Even the rims look tired, showing tiny dents and chips from decades of use. The reverse makes the story even clearer. The eagle's wings are worn down to smooth patches, the feathers are barely visible, and the texture that should be sharp has blended into one dull surface. You can also see scattered dark spots from oxidation and some faint greenish residue near the lower devices, a sign of moisture exposure long ago. It's rough, it's battered, but here's where things get interesting, because 1987 D quarters are not supposed to be valuable unless something unusual happened during minting. Collectors watch this date very closely because it produced some rare off-center strikes, double die, obverses, and a few extremely hard-to-find wrong planche errors. And even though the coin in front of you isn't showing its full strength anymore, the condition actually adds mystery. Sometimes heavyware hides errors quietly, and a trained eye or a lucky beginner can uncover something that pushes a basic pocket quarter into shocking territory. A normal circulated 1987 D quarter like this one would usually be worth only face value, maybe $1 or $2 if someone likes collecting worn silver-colored coins. But if this coin hides an off-center strike under all that wear, or an unrecognized double die on the lettering, you're suddenly stepping into low four-figure territory. And if by chance this quarter was one of the few struck on a nickel planche or transitional test metal, the value rockets into the tens of thousands, even in this beat-up condition. Now imagine the same coin in uncirculated shape with a clear major mint error. That's where collectors start getting competitive. A perfect off-metal 1987 D quarter has the potential to climb far above $300,000 at the right auction house. These extreme prices happen because error collectors chase rarity, not beauty. A coin can be ugly, worn, scratched, and completely lifeless. But if it's the wrong metal or dramatically misstruck, it becomes a treasure that nobody can replace. And that's the thrilling part. And even though this 1987 D looks like it came out of an ashtray or a junk drawer, it forces you to look closer. Coins like this remind us that value isn't always about shiny surfaces. Sometimes the most plain, most ignored quarter becomes the piece that turns an ordinary day into a story worth telling. Moving on, the next coin in our lineup takes the stakes even higher. And wait until you see the condition on that one. It might look worse than this, but the value behind it will shock you even more. Next up is a coin that hides its story under some of the hardest wear we've seen so far. This 1986 P quarter looks like it has survived decades of pockets, keychains, sidewalks, and maybe even a few parking meters. At first glance, you see the heavy surface wear. The fields are covered with scratches that run in every direction. The high points of Washington's portrait are almost completely smoothed down, especially around the hair and forehead. The letters look soft, as if time has slowly pushed them back into the metal. On the reverse, the eagle's wings have lost most of their detail, and there are patches of grime set deep into the surface, especially around the branches. This is the kind of coin that looks unimportant, but collectors know better. Sometimes the ugliest coins hide the biggest surprises. The interesting thing about the 1986 P is that it was part of a massive production year. The Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions, so most people expect these coins to be worthless, but that's exactly why some of the rare survivors carry shocking value. In certain cases, coins from this year were struck on transitional planches, struck off-center, or hit with double dies that only show up after careful inspection. The moment collectors find one of those errors, the price jumps from pocket change to life-changing money almost instantly. Now imagine this specific coin you're looking at. Even with the rough wear, if hidden underneath all that damage there was a faint misalignment of the strike, or if the rim was slightly clipped, or if the edges carried signs of a rare broad strike, its value would skyrocket. Even a subtle doubling on the date or letters, barely visible under all the scratches, could place this coin in elite territory. And when I say elite, I mean values that can hit over $300,000 in top-tier error examples. That's the thrill of these worn-out quarters, and the worse they look, the more people ignore them, and the more treasure they hide. Circulated versions with no errors are normally worth face value, maybe $1 or $2 if someone wants it for a folder. But uncirculated 1986p quarters with crisp strikes have already reached four figures at auctions, and when you add an error to the mix, collectors stop caring about the condition and start caring about rarity. A rare double rim strike, a dramatic off-center hit, or a planche mistake can turn even a beat-up survivor like this into one of the biggest wins of your coin collecting life. So before you throw away a quarter that looks this rough, remember, condition can lie. History can hide. And value doesn't always shine. It sometimes comes covered in scratches, dirt, and decades of use. This 1986p proves that even the most worn coin can carry the kind of worth that keeps collectors searching, hoping, and checking every date they find. Next up, we're stepping back to 1969, and this quarter has a look that immediately tells you it has lived a long, rough life. The moment you see it, the worn-down surfaces, the scattered scratches, and the almost sanded-off appearance make you wonder how many hands it passed through. The details are soft, the fields are dull, and you can see marks that come from decades of everyday use. But coins like this sometimes hide value where nobody expects it, and this particular year has a history that makes collectors look twice, even when the coin is in poor condition like the one you're seeing now. The Philadelphia Mint struck a large number of quarters in 1969, but that doesn't stop this date from surprising collectors. What makes it special is that certain errors from this year have sold for prices that don't even sound real. And people overlook these worn pieces because they think rough condition means low value. But for 1969 quarters, the opposite can sometimes happen. Even coins that appear scratched up, dull, or heavily circulated can carry rare traits that send their value into unbelievable territory. On the coin in front of you, the surface wear is obvious, the high points are nearly flat, and some areas almost blend into the fields. That kind of wear tells us it spent a lifetime in pockets, cash registers, and circulation bins. But that kind of long circulation sometimes hides the strongest clues, especially on 1960s quarters. Collectors often look closely for light doubling, minting pressure issues, or die fatigue, errors that can hide under years of wear. If any doubling on the date or letters survive beneath the wear, even faint, this same rough-looking quarter could suddenly be worth more than a typical collector ever expects. In regular circulated condition without errors, a 1969 quarter is usually worth its face value. But if this coin had even a minor doubling or a faint shifted strike, collectors could pay hundreds. And when we move up to uncirculated examples, especially those struck sharply with no damage, the price jumps into serious territory. Mint State 65 coins from this year have crossed well above the $1,000 line at auction. But here's where the shock comes in. The truly rare 1969 major errors, the ones experts still talk about, have broken past the six-figure range. Some have sold for more than $300,000, and a few examples were even positioned to climb toward $500,000. Imagine that. A coin just like the one you're looking at now, scratched up, dull, worn from edge to edge, could have been hiding a life-changing error inside those worn details. That's why collectors love 1969. It's unpredictable. It keeps you guessing. You can see a coin in rough condition and still get that feeling that something is hiding just below the surface. And if you've collected coins for a long time, you know that this feeling is how some of the biggest discoveries begin. So before you move on, take one last close look at this worn 1969 quarter, because coins like this prove that even the roughest survivors can hold the kind of value that stops collectors in their tracks. Next up, we come to a 1977 Washington quarter that almost looks like it's been through every pocket in America. The moment you look at it, you see patches of green oxidation across the surface, especially around the lettering. The coin has heavy wear, dull color, and the kind of rough texture that only comes from decades of circulation. Most people would toss a coin like this aside without a second thought. But this is exactly the kind of quarter that reminds us why coin collecting is so full of surprises. Sometimes the ugliest coin in the batch is the one that stops your heart. What makes this 1977 quarter stand out is that even in this rough condition, it still hints at the strange world of mint errors that year. A lot of odd pieces came out of the late 70s. Weak strikes, broad strikes, even a few rare double die varieties that almost never show up today. When a coin like this shows heavy wear, it becomes harder to spot those errors, but collectors still look closely at dates, edges, and spacing because one tiny mistake from the mint could turn a 25-cent coin into a life-changing discovery. A regular circulated 1977 quarter in this condition might normally be worth only a few cents over face value. But here's where the story turns shocking. If this same date carries a major mint error, like a dramatic off-center strike or the rare doubled date that specialist collectors hunt for, even a coin that looks this beat up can jump straight into 4- and 5-figure territory. There are documented sales of worn 1977 error quarters, bringing in $20,000, $30,000, even $50,000 simply because the error itself is valuable enough to override the condition. Now imagine this coin as a high-grade survivor. If a 1977 quarter appears in uncirculated condition with a strong mint error, the value rises so fast it almost feels unreal. We're talking serious collector competition and final auction prices soaring well past $100,000. The rarest examples, the ones where an extreme error meets a crisp, untouched surface, have been estimated by top graders to approach the $200,000 and even $300,000 range. That's the kind of number that makes you stop, breathe, and think about how many quarters you've walked past without ever checking the date. The real lesson from a coin like this one is simple. Don't judge value by appearance alone. A dirty, badly worn, green-stained 1977 quarter could still hide something extraordinary. Older collectors often say that the most rewarding finds aren't the pretty ones. They're the ones that make you lean in and look twice. And this year is one of those look twice years. And so before you toss an old quarter back into the change jar, take a moment. Look at the edges, the date, the spacing. Because even a coin that looks like this one might be sitting on a secret. And the next person who checks their pocket change could be the one who discovers a quarter worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, as we wrap up our countdown, let's finish with a coin that looks simple at first glance, but carries the kind of hidden thrill that keeps collectors searching through their change to this very day. This 1996 P. Washington quarter may look worn, scratched, and softened from years of circulation, but don't let that fool you. Coins like this have shocked collectors before because when the right error hides beneath surface wear, the value can skyrocket far beyond what anyone expects. Just look closely at this piece. The surface shows heavy circulation. The fields are full of light scratches. The edges are muted, and the high points of Washington's profile are nearly blended into the background. That level of wear tells us this coin spent decades moving through pockets, cash registers, and coin jars. And sometimes those long journeys help hide the very thing that makes a coin valuable. That's why worn quarters from the 90s deserve just as much attention as the shiny ones. Now, the 1996P is known for some surprising minting issues. One of the biggest is the famous extra metal strike-through errors that show up near the motto or around the jawline. Another is the doubled eagles on the reverse that collectors pay huge money for, even in circulated shape. And the most shocking one is the broad strike error, where the collar fails during minting and the coin expands outward. If you spot that on a worn 1996 quarter, you've hit something special. Even in this rough shape, those errors can turn a pocket find into a life-changing discovery. In regular circulation, a heavily worn 1996P like this one usually sits at face value. But collectors are hungry for the rare errors tied to this year. If this quarter carried a strong double die on the reverse, even in damaged condition, it could jump to thousands. And if it carried a bold, broad strike where the whole rim is stretched and distorted, collectors would easily fight their way past the $25,000 range. But here's where things get unbelievable. A clean, sharp, mint state 1996P with a dramatic struck-through grease error has already passed the $300,000 mark in private sales. So imagine if you found one with a second major error stacked on top of it. Those kinds of coins don't hit the market, they hit headlines, and this is why you should always check the details, even on the coins that look too far gone to matter. Condition isn't everything when the mint makes a mistake. Errors break all the rules. A coin like this may look tired, but the story it carries could be enormous. That's the magic of collecting. That's the thrill that keeps people searching. And with that, we close out our list with a reminder. Never overlook a worn quarter. Sometimes the ugliest ones are hiding the biggest surprises.